You stopped going to parties. Not because you hate people, but because the conversations feel like standing in shallow water when you know the ocean exists. You've sat at a dinner table surrounded by laughing, talking people and felt completely, inexplicably alone. You've tried, God knows you've tried, to meet them where they are, to care about what they care about, to find meaning in what they call meaningful. But somewhere along the way, you stopped pretending. And the moment you stopped pretending, you started disappearing. People called it antisocial. They called it arrogance. They called it depression. Schopenhauer called it intelligence. What you're about to hear isn't a self-help script telling you to put yourself out there or find your tribe. This is something older, darker, and, if you're ready for it, far more liberating. This is the philosophical diagnosis that 19th century German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer wrote for people exactly like you, nearly 200 years before the internet gave your isolation a comment section. Here is what this video will show you. Your withdrawal from society is not a malfunction. It is a symptom of something Schopenhauer spent his entire life trying to articulate: the incompatibility between a rare kind of mind and the noise that the world insists you participate in. By the end of this, you won't just understand why you retreat, you'll understand why the truly intelligent have always retreated, and what to do with that knowledge. Let's begin. Think about the last conversation that genuinely stimulated you. Not one that was polite or entertaining or comfortable, but one that moved something inside you. One where ideas collided, where the other person surprised you, where you walked away feeling more awake than when you sat down. How long ago was that? Now think about how many conversations you've had since then. Hundreds, probably, maybe thousands. Small talk about weather, complaints about work, opinions about things neither person actually researched, enthusiasm for things that will be forgotten in 6 months. Schopenhauer saw this pattern in 19th century European society and named it with devastating precision. He wrote, "The more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him." Read that again. Not the more ignorant, the more unintelligent. Because ignorance can be corrected with information. But a certain kind of shallowness isn't about missing facts. It's about missing the capacity to feel the weight of existence itself. And here is what this means for you. If you walk through the world and feel constantly burdened by the bigness of things, by mortality, by meaning, by the strangeness that any of this exists at all, you are not broken. You are operating at a frequency that most people simply cannot receive. This isn't elitism for its own sake. This is Schopenhauer's central observation about the distribution of consciousness across human beings. Not all minds are built alike. Not all minds reach the same depth. And the tragedy, his word, not mine, is that the world is organized for the majority, not the minority. The social world, its rituals, its conversations, its events, its expectations, is calibrated for the average, for the person who finds genuine comfort in surface-level exchange, for the person who does not lie awake at night asking questions that have no clean answers. And if you are not that person, then every social interaction carries a hidden tax, a constant expenditure of energy to translate yourself into a language the room can understand, to dim your thoughts so they don't make others uncomfortable, to perform interest in things that genuinely bore you. Schopenhauer observed this exact phenomenon. Ordinary people think merely of how they shall spend their time. A man of any talent tries to use it. That contrast, spending versus using, is everything. The person spending time at the party, filling silence with noise, is not experiencing what you experience when you're alone with a book, a problem, a piece of music that breaks something open in you. They are not bored, they are genuinely satisfied. And you are not arrogant for being unable to share that satisfaction. You are simply different. The first thing Schopenhauer asks you to accept is this: your withdrawal from meaningless social noise is not avoidance, it is discernment. And discernment for a mind like yours is not optional, it is survival.
This is the cruelest part of this. You don't withdraw because you don't want connection. You withdraw because you want it too much, and the world keeps offering you something that looks like connection, but feels like nothing at all. This is the loneliness nobody warns you about. Not the loneliness of being physically alone. You've probably learned to love that. This is the loneliness of being surrounded and still unseen, of speaking and not being heard, not because you weren't loud enough, but because the frequency you're broadcasting on simply doesn't land. Modern psychology has a name for one layer of this: intellectual loneliness. It's the specific ache that comes from not social isolation, but from the absence of minds that challenge yours. Researchers who study gifted adults consistently find that the single greatest complaint among highly intelligent people is not professional failure or social rejection, it's the profound difficulty of finding genuine peer connection. But Schopenhauer went deeper than modern psychology dares to go. He didn't just say that intelligent people feel lonely. He said that solitude is the natural state of a profound mind, and that society, for such a mind, is not a resource, but a cost. He wrote, "A man can be himself so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free." Sit with that. Not tolerates solitude, not endures solitude, loves it. Because in solitude, there is no performance, no calibration, no translation. The mask comes off, not the mask you wear to deceive, but the mask you wear just to be legible to other people. You know this feeling. The relief of closing the door, the exhale that comes when the social obligation is finally over. People who don't understand you will call this misanthropy, but it isn't hatred of people, it's the relief of returning to yourself. Here's the mycological mechanism underneath this. Highly intelligent people tend to have richer internal worlds. The inner monologue is more complex, more layered, more populated with ideas, questions, and observations. And the more complex your inner world, the more jarring the transition into a social environment that doesn't match it. It's not that parties are objectively bad, it's that your baseline, the richness of what's happening inside your own mind, is already so high that most external social environments represent a downgrade. You're not being antisocial, you're protecting something valuable. Schopenhauer understood this as a form of philosophical self-preservation. He wrote, "The man of inner wealth wants nothing from outside but the negative gift of undisturbed leisure." Undisturbed leisure. Not entertainment, not stimulation from outside, just the space to be fully what you are, without the constant friction of a world that wasn't designed for minds like yours. Here's Chapter 2's brutal truth. You are not broken for wanting to be alone. You are broken only when you let a society that doesn't understand you convince you that your solitude is a wound.
Every therapist, well-meaning friend, and self-help book has told you some version of the same thing. Push through the discomfort. Be more social. Smile more. Say yes to invitations. Build your social muscle. And you've tried. You know you have. You've gone to the events. You've made the small talk. You've nodded along to conversations about things that didn't interest you, laughed at jokes that didn't land, and come home afterward feeling not recharged, not even neutral, but depleted, hollowed out, like you spent the evening giving something away and received nothing back. And then someone told you to go back and do it again. This advice fails you not because social connection is unimportant. It is deeply important, and Schopenhauer never denied that, but because it treats your withdrawal as a fear to overcome rather than an intelligence to honor. The mainstream narrative assumes that isolation is always pathological, that anyone who prefers solitude must be anxious, depressed, or simply hasn't met the right people yet. What it cannot accommodate is the Schopenhauerian possibility that for a certain kind of mind, the social world genuinely offers less than the inner world. Not sometimes, not in certain moods, structurally, fundamentally. Schopenhauer was brutally direct about this. Solitude is the lot of all excellent minds. Not a burden they carry, not a phase they pass through, their lot, their natural condition, their philosophical inheritance. Think about the people throughout history whose work you most admire, the writers, the philosophers, the scientists, the artists. How many of them were famous for their vibrant social lives? How many were, by the standards of their time, considered strange, cold, difficult, reclusive? Darwin took solitary walks every day and avoided London whenever possible. Nietzsche's social world collapsed as his thinking deepened. Kafka alienated nearly anyone who tried to get close to him. Tesla was openly contemptuous of social niceties, and Schopenhauer himself, famously difficult, famously alone, famously productive. The pattern isn't coincidence, it's architecture. Here's what the just be more social advice gets catastrophically wrong. It assumes that what you lose by withdrawing from society is greater than what you gain. But for the person with a rich inner world, the calculation runs the other way. What you lose, noise, performance, the exhausting work of translation, is far outweighed by what you gain, depth, clarity, the slow work of actually thinking. Modern psychology now supports this through research on introversion and high sensitivity. Elaine Aron's work on highly sensitive persons shows that roughly 20% of the population processes information at a deeper level, noticing more, feeling more, making more connections, and that this deeper processing comes with a direct cost, faster overwhelm in stimulating social environments. Schopenhauer explained it long before psychology named it. The advice to just socialize more is like telling someone with acute hearing to enjoy standing next to a speaker. The problem isn't weakness, the problem is calibration. To understand why Schopenhauer's prescription for the intelligent mind involves withdrawal, you need to understand his most foundational idea, the one that everything else in his philosophy rests on. He called it the will. Not willpower, not intention, something far bigger and far more sinister. Schopenhauer argued that beneath all of human experience, beneath thought, desire, ambition, love, fear, there is a blind, purposeless, insatiable force driving every living thing. He called it the will to live, and it does not want your happiness. It does not want your fulfillment. It simply wants to continue, to perpetuate, to keep the wheel spinning. This force is what makes you hungry when you've just eaten, what makes you desire the next thing the moment you've acquired the last one, what makes the crowd anxious, restless, consuming, performing, always moving, never arriving. Society, in Schopenhauer's analysis, is the collective expression of the will. It is the will made social, noisy, urgent, self-perpetuating, and deeply uninterested in depth or truth. The crowd does not gather to think. The crowd gathers to want together, to reinforce each other's desires, to validate each other's choices, to keep each other inside the cycle. And this is the trap. When you participate in society on its own terms, when you attend the events, pursue the status markers, perform the social rituals, you're not connecting, you are feeding the will. You are adding your energy to a machine that produces noise and calls it meaning. Schopenhauer wrote, "The cheapest form of pride is national pride, for the man affected with it makes a virtue of a quality he shares with millions." He wasn't just talking about nationalism, he was diagnosing something structural about crowd psychology, the way belonging to a group flatters people into mistaking collective identity for individual worth. The crowd tells you you matter because you are part of it, but that mattering is borrowed, not earned. It evaporates the moment you step away from the mirror the crowd holds up. The intelligent mind, Schopenhauer's man of genius, sees through this, not because they're cynical, but because they can't stop seeing. The machinery is visible to them in a way it isn't for others, and seeing the machinery makes it very, very difficult to enjoy the show. This is why withdrawal isn't a choice for many deeply thinking people. It's a consequence. Once you've seen the will operating through social performance, once you've recognized the theater for what it is, you cannot simply unsee it. You cannot return to genuine, unconscious participation. The psychologist Erich Fromm called this the burden of freedom, the painful awareness that comes with stepping outside the comfortable consensus reality that most people inhabit. Schopenhauer simply called it the price of intelligence. And it is a price, but it is also a door.
So here is where most philosophical essays abandon you. They describe the problem with devastating precision and then leave you standing in it. Not this one. Schopenhauer was not a man who stopped at diagnosis. His entire philosophical project, despite its reputation for pure pessimism, was fundamentally about how to live with the truth of existence, and his prescription for the intelligent mind is not give up. It is something far more radical and far more actionable. It begins with what he called aesthetic contemplation. When you lose yourself completely in a piece of music, when the boundaries of self dissolve and there is only sound, you have briefly escaped the will. When you are so absorbed in a book that you forget to be anxious, forget to be hungry, forget to be whoever the world needs you to be, that is not escapism. That is, for Schopenhauer, the closest thing to liberation that a human being can experience. The intelligent few navigate social withdrawal not by becoming hermits, though some do, but by building an inner life so rich, so genuinely sustaining that the absence of shallow social noise stops feeling like deprivation and starts feeling like spaciousness. Here is what this looks like practically. First, they stop apologizing for their solitude. The moment you stop treating your preference for depth as a defect to be corrected, you stop hemorrhaging energy on guilt and self-explanation. Schopenhauer was not apologetic about his solitude. He regarded it as the condition of his work. You should too. Second, they become ruthlessly selective. This is not the same as becoming a recluse. Schopenhauer did not say all human connection is worthless. He said shallow human connection is a net drain. The intelligent few do not avoid people. They avoid the wrong people. They invest their limited social energy in the rare individuals who can meet them at depth. Schopenhauer wrote, "One should use common words to say uncommon things." The corollary, find the people who can hear uncommon things. They exist.
they are rare, they are worth the search. Third, they protect their inner world the way other people protect their income. Your capacity for deep thought, for aesthetic experience, for genuine reflection, this is your actual wealth. Every hour spent in draining social performance is an hour subtracted from this. The intelligent few account for this cost and make deliberate decisions accordingly. Modern research on what psychologists call deep work, sustained distraction-free cognitive effort, confirms what Schopenhauer knew intuitively. The conditions for genuine intellectual output are fundamentally incompatible with constant social availability. The people producing the most meaningful work are almost universally protecting significant amounts of solitary time. You are not withdrawing from life. You are withdrawing from the counterfeit version of life that the social world sells as the real thing. And that is not a retreat. That is a reclamation.
Let's be honest about something. Everything in this video so far could be misused. It could be taken as permission to close the door entirely, to dismiss all human connection as noise, to retreat into a philosophy that sounds like liberation, but functions like avoidance. Schopenhauer himself fell into this trap at times, brilliant, isolated, frequently bitter, famously difficult in his personal relationships. He understood the theory of his own philosophy better than almost anyone. He did not always live it well. So let's be precise about what he was actually prescribing and what he was not. He was not prescribing contempt. The intelligent person who withdraws from shallow society out of contempt has simply traded one form of ego-driven suffering for another. You are not better than the people at the party. You are differently configured. That difference is not a hierarchy. It is simply a fact about the distribution of minds. He was not prescribing permanent isolation. Even Schopenhauer, in his most solitary years, had correspondents, students, readers he cared about. Total isolation is not liberation. It is its own kind of will-driven suffering, the suffering of the ego that cannot tolerate the friction of other human beings. What he was prescribing, what the entire arc of his philosophy points toward, is acceptance without resignation. Accept that the world is not built for your mind. Accept that most conversations will not reach the depth you're hungry for. Accept that the social world will repeatedly offer you things that look like nourishment but leave you empty. Accept it. Not with bitterness, not with the smug superiority of someone who thinks they've seen through the illusion while everyone else is trapped, but with the quiet, grounded recognition of someone who has stopped spending their life fighting a reality they cannot change. Schopenhauer wrote, "Compassion is the basis of morality." This is the piece of his philosophy that most people miss. The man they call the philosopher of pessimism believed that genuine understanding of suffering, your own and others, is the foundation of human goodness. When you stop expecting the world to be different than it is, something surprising happens. You stop resenting the people who can't meet you at depth. They are not your enemies. They are caught in the same will you're caught in, just expressing it differently. The path forward, then, is not withdrawal as an end. It is withdrawal as a means. Withdrawal from noise so that you can build something real. Withdrawal from performance so that you can find the people worth performing nothing for. Withdrawal from the counterfeit so that you can recognize the genuine when it appears. And it does appear, rarely, quietly, in a book that says exactly what you've always felt but never had words for, in a conversation at 2 a.m. that you didn't plan, in the work you do when no one is watching, because the work itself is enough. That is what Schopenhauer was protecting. That is what your withdrawal, at its best, is protecting. You withdraw from society not because you hate people, not because you're broken, not because you failed at connection and gave up. You withdraw because somewhere inside you, beneath all the guilt, all the social conditioning, all the years of being told you should want what everyone else wants, you know. You know that most of what passes for human connection is performance. You know that most of what passes for meaning is distraction. You know that the noise of the social world is not a celebration of life. It is, more often, the sound of people trying not to think too hard about it. And that knowing, that incapacity to unknow, is your burden and your gift. Schopenhauer said that genius is the most complete objectivity of mind. Not intelligence as a tool for getting things, but intelligence as a capacity for seeing, clearly, honestly, without the comfortable filter of social consensus. And the price of that seeing is exactly what you've been paying. The inability to lose yourself in shallow waters, the restlessness in rooms full of noise, the loneliness that isn't solved by more people, only by better ones, or the deep private companionship of your own thinking mind. Accept it. You will not find your answer in more socializing. Accept it. You will not fix this with better small talk. Accept it. You will not stop withdrawing by convincing yourself that the noise has something to offer that your silence doesn't. Accept it. The intelligent mind, throughout all of human history, has always stepped back from the crowd, not because the crowd was evil, but because the crowd was loud. And loudness is the enemy of the kind of thinking that actually changes things. Your solitude is not a wound, it is a workshop. What you build there, in the quiet, in the withdrawal, in the long hours the social world will never understand, that is your contribution. That is what makes the isolation worth it. Not everyone will understand this, most won't, and now, for the first time, perhaps, that's okay.
If this video reached something in you, if it named something you've felt for years but never heard spoken aloud, then I want you to write one thing in the comments below. Just 4 words. It made sense to me. That's it. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to justify your solitude to anyone in the comments section. Just 4 words, and you'll know that somewhere out there, another mind felt exactly what you felt. Not the kind that asks you to empty your mind and think of nothing. The kind that teaches you to be with the fullness of your own consciousness. That is where real transformation lives. Subscribe if you want to keep going. There is so much more where this came from. Nietzsche, Camus, Cioran, the existentialists, the Stoics, all of them circling the same fire from different angles. The fire is real, and now you know where it is.